We have 673 pages of budget-related bills. We got access to at 7:30 last night. It's just really hard to get through 673 pages, understand all of it, have our constituents give us input, then decide how to vote on everything. But based on what I know about this, I can't support this irresponsible spending plan.
Welcome back to The States. I'm your host, Esther Wickham. Pennsylvania lawmakers on Sunday approved over $50 billion budget for the 2026-27 fiscal year after getting a signature from the governor, Josh Shapiro. Here to talk a little bit more about it, we have here the Center Square's Northeast Regional Editor, Christen Smith. Christen, thanks so much for joining us today. Now, it seems like there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to this budget. So I think starting out, it'd be great to hear from your perspective, what are the big takeaways that taxpayers can realize in this budget approval?
All right, so top line number is $50.8 billion. It's a little less than what the governor wanted to spend. It's a little more than what Republicans wanted to spend. And there's a lot of the typical stuff in there, more money for public education, more money for mental health and for human services and Medicaid and all those kinds of things. What's not in there might be the bigger news for taxpayers, and that is a lot to do with regulations around data centers, skill games, and whether we're going to legalize recreational marijuana, and that's just a few.
Yeah, and aside from, the things that they kind of left out, specifically the things that they approved and kind of included, there was some debates amongst Republicans and Democrats. The approval was 167 to 35, which a majority or all of the 35 dissenting were Republicans. Could you kind of talk a little bit about what were some of the responses and reactions to the budget proposal on Sunday?
A lot of the no votes came from the position that the idea that the budget was balanced and met in the middle was really just a farce, that there was a lot of accounting tricks to make it look like the budget was balanced, and that rather than raiding our emergency savings fund, lawmakers picked up the couch cushions and shook them for every penny that they could find. And they also pushed forward some spending so that it wouldn't appear in this year's books, but be pushed to next year's books. So for those lawmakers who just wouldn't vote for it, that was their big concern, was that there was nothing balanced about this. It's really just PR tricks.
Yeah. And kind of going back to that idea of you saying that there's a lot, being not talked about or untouched, not really looked into. Why do you think that is? Is it something where it's just there's too much of a gap between a conversation that they couldn't even begin to discuss these various issues like data centers to maybe even find common ground, and maybe they just will push it to next year's budget approval?
Certainly that seems to be the trend of what's happening in the legislature over the last few years. Last year, our budget was 4 months late. And a big reason for that is because they were really trying to hammer out issues that they just couldn't agree on. And this year it was only 12 days late. So it appears that they really abandoned that strategy and opted in favor of getting something passed that was agreeable rather than trying to decide all of these big questions. The problem is that they left a lot of money on the table, potentially, that could have been used to help fund some of these increases in spending. Things like, again, regulating skill games in Pennsylvania, which are like slot machines, but different in the sense that it's not just pulling a lever and wishing for the best of luck. There's more skill involved, as the name implies. So taxing those could have brought in roughly $300 million, depending on what tax rate there was. If we had taxed recreational marijuana and legalized it, there would have been another couple $2 billion, depending on whose estimates you looked at. So these are things that were always hard for the legislature to come to common ground on, and it seems that they have again punted.
Yeah. And as you said before, there's about a $7.7 billion amount for, as they say, a rainy day fund. And you kind of note that this is a priority for Republicans. Why is it a priority for Republicans to kind of have this big chunk of money left for, a rainy day?
They see this as the state's backstop to big tax increases, and along with it, severe budget or severe program cuts, or a combination of both. It's, like I said, it's our emergency savings account. It's only supposed to be touched in times of severe economic downturn or extraordinary circumstances, like COVID-19 would have been a great example of that. And we've worked hard in the state to really build this savings account. We went from $234 million 5 years ago to now nearly $8 billion. So Republicans have been really insistent that we stop taking the money out of our savings account to cover spending that is just going to keep growing year after year. And that's something that we would avoid in our personal lives too. We wouldn't keep raiding our savings to pay the electricity bill every month, knowing that cost is going to go up and up and up. So this is in the similar vein. It's just at a multi-billion-dollar level.
Yeah. And finally, one big issue that I think is a major, conversation in all states is the conversation on education. Now, it looks like Pennsylvania's budget definitely continued major increases for K through 12 education, but I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on where Pennsylvania and where taxpayers are at in regards to opting in for school choice. There seems to be a bipartisan support between Republicans and Democrats within the state for Governor Shapiro to, sign in to opt in for school choice. It seems like there's an increase in, education funding within this budget, but it doesn't seem like the state or Shapiro is going to move anytime soon when it comes to school choice. From what you're seeing, what could we potentially be looking out for now that the budget's been approved and we're moving forward with education spending?
For now, as far as school choice goes, it's very quiet. Shapiro has refused to answer whether he will be opting the state into the federal program. Pennsylvania has a state program that is very, very similar. We've increased funding for that program to over $600 million over the last 10 years. That is something that was left out of the budget as far as an increase goes. Instead, another $500+ million was given to public schools. That's a pretty good indication of the dynamics at play, in the sense that Democrats historically support funding public education, and Republicans are very supportive of school choice and increasing funding for those programs. And as you pointed out, there is bipartisan support to find somewhere in the middle. And in fact, Democrats have voted for budgets that increase school choice spending in Pennsylvania. So there is, again, this is another issue that is coming to a head in Pennsylvania. And in fact, there was some talk from Democrats in the House, where they have a very small majority, about whether we should be spending the amount of money that we spend on school choice tax credits, or whether that money would be better spent somewhere else in regular education, public education. That didn't come to pass. There was no repeal, but it hints to the thought process behind where the parties might be moving on school choice. And one can't help but wonder, where does this tie into the federal program? And again, Shapiro has been quiet, so we just don't know what Pennsylvania's future is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll definitely be keeping an eye out for those developments, what kind of comes about since this budget's now approved. The Center Square's Christen Smith, greatly appreciate your time. For more stories like this, whether that be in Pennsylvania or other states around, you can go to our website at thecentersquare.com.